Hello and welcome to another scrapbooking process video. Today I'm going to share the process for this layout right here, which is a page that came together using the Coolers app. Here's the website for checking out this app. This is an app that allows you to take any photo and create a little color palette. And I've been using this app for a couple of years now in my scrapbooking every once in a while. And I find it to be a really fun way to grab a color palette and then hit up my scraps and find some papers and embellishments that work with the color scheme and create a layout. And that's exactly what I did with this one. So keep watching if you want to see how this one came together. Now for the entire video, I am live streaming with my patrons during the filming of this, so that's why the footage is a little bit different. My patrons actually helped me choose this as the photo that I'll be scrapping today, and I'm also going to scrapbook these ones soon, so I'm just going to put those in a little tray. And Freckled Fawn sent me these enamel dots as a freebie with an order I placed, so I'm going to try to use those as well. And the next little bit of footage I have slowed down a little bit so you can see me use the Coolers app, which I did link to at the beginning. So I'm just searching for it and it comes up and it immediately shows you a color palette, and its main focus is to just create random palettes. But if you go into the other tools, one of them is use a photo to generate a color palette, and so I've just selected that, and now I just have to go in and find this particular photo. So there it is. I selected it and it comes up just like that. And now the app itself will generate a random color palette based on the photo, and as you can see, it was not quite what I was looking for. I wanted something a little bit more colorful, and I wanted to grab some of the yellow that's in the house in the background, and I think it's one of the villas in the background. So I just have to get my little cursor so that it's on some of the yellow there, and then it replaces that first color with that bright yellow instead of the gray, because I didn't feel like I needed two grays on this color palette. So that is actually looking pretty good. And I am going to show you here how you could customize any of these colors by just pressing on it, and it shows you which part of the photo it took that color from, and you can just move it around if you want a slightly different color. You can also add colors to the palette or subtract so that you have fewer or more photos in your color palette as well. And now I'm just going to create a collage with this because I just really love doing that. I could have just done a screenshot and printed that up, but I like to have a printed out collage on hand just because that's the way I am. I like this app a lot. And I like to use the vertical one when I've got a vertical photo, and then when I've got a horizontal photo like this, I like to print the horizontal option here. There are a lot of other different options. If you see at the bottom, you could scroll over and find lots of other ways to print this up into a collage, but I like this. I like these two the best, this one and then the vertical version of this. You can turn the hex codes on and off. If you were doing something digital, you could probably use those hex codes, but I'm just doing physical scrapbooking here, so I don't need the hex codes. So now I'm going to actually show you how I store my scraps. I keep my scraps in these plastic Ziploc bags with the Ziplocs cut off of them from the dollar store. They're the big 14 by 14 inch ones. And I just keep them on their sides with little scrapbook holders to divide them and to hold them upright when they tend to slump a little bit when I pull one or two of them out. I'm going to be using so many different colors of scraps today that I decided to take all of my scraps, put them into a separate basket, and I just have it right there beside me. I changed the angle just so that you could see what my setup is. My scraps are right there down by my left-hand side, and I can pull up these bags of scraps whenever I want to kind of pull out some new scraps. So I'm starting with my green little bag of scraps. It's a giant bag of scraps, actually. I've been keeping my scraps ever since I first started scrapbooking back in 2009. So I have so many scraps, and I've been sorting them by color right from the beginning back in 2009. So obviously I have a lot of scraps. So there's no need for me to dip into a new collection here or new paper. I've got plenty to work from here. So as you can see, I'm just using this color palette as my guide, and I picked out some greens. I'm now picking out a couple of yellows that match with that yellow. They don't have to be exact, because obviously I don't have scrapbook paper from every single color that's, available in the whole world, but I have a lot. Sometimes it feels like I have all of the colors in the whole world. Now these are the blues, and I like the boldness that this dot gives me, and it's got that really nice dark blue. I can't get an exact match to that really dark blue in the center of the color palette. I love that blue. It's just slightly greeny. A little bit more green than a typical navy blue, and I just don't have anything that color. So I'm going to use navy blue as my dark blue option for this page. And that blue is a little bit too bright, so I won't pick that one. I don't have too many actual blues. Many of my blues are actually turquoise or different versions of mint or teal or those sorts of, like a bluey turquoise instead of a greeny turquoise. So I don't have a whole lot to choose from, but I did find that scrap of cardstock there that I think is a pretty decent match with the blue in my color palette, and in the sky it's a little bit darker, but it's okay. And I do keep these, see that clear piece of plastic? I keep those in my scrap bags just to keep them firm. It's just, it's from that, boy, I had a hard time thinking of the name of it. It's from Cropper Hoppers, the Cropper Hopper file folders that come in the 12 by 12 size. So these are the papers that I chose, and I just love how they look all laid out randomly on my desk. I think they work really well with this photo. And interestingly, I don't think I would have ever chosen these papers if I didn't have that color palette. So I'm really, really pleased already with how much having that color palette is helping me with this process. In fact, between this tool and the other tool that I'm going to use for my next layout, which is even more fun, which is the color palettes by Sarah Renee Clark, it's gotten me really hyped and excited about scrapbooking all over again. So yeah, here are the cubes. So we were talking about it, so I just wanted to kind of show the cubes. If you are interested in seeing me scrapbook using these cubes and the color palette that goes with them, so there are two interactive PDF files that you can use to search for palettes, and then you can pull out the one that you like once you find it. If you want to see me use these to scrapbook a page, make sure that you watch the next page, which is called Adventure with You. It should be the next one on my channel. So let's get back to the process here. I do need some really dark blue here. So I had these scraps of navy blue in my stash already. And this is a little mini kit-ish of supplies that I bought in the summer of 2022. Most of it is Paige Evans and Vicki Boutin products. And so I'm picking a couple because I knew that those colors were in this batch of supplies that I have. So these are new. Most of this page is using scraps, but my background paper that I'm using, this beautiful green, it's reading as a solid on my video, but it's actually a very, very subtle pinstripe. It's a diagonal pinstripe. It's gorgeous. And it is from, I'm going to say Paige Evans. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's from Paige Evans. So I do have some summer supplies that I happened to have on hand because I made a summer themed layout. So I just wanted to breeze through that, but I'm not going to pull any supplies from that, I don't think. Now I'm just going to take the designer strip off of this. No, I didn't flip it over, so we're not going to see who that paper's by. I'm pretty sure it's Paige Evans. So now I'm going to double matte this photo. I like my photos to have a white border around the edge of them. I just like that clean look that you get from that, and it gives your photo just a little bit of space to breathe. So because I printed this up with borderless settings on my printer, and I printed it at a full 4x6, I need to add a border to that. And now I'm going to double mat it by matting it once again on this navy blue cardstock from another page that I did recently. I'm just using my Stampin' Up trimmer here to trim that down, and I'll hang on to the scraps in case I want to use them anywhere else in this page. Now, I would really like to make a border around the entire outside edge of this page, but I don't have a full sheet of that polka dot patterned paper. I wish I did, but I don't have a full page of it, so I'm thinking I won't be able to do that, but hang on, I'm going to come back to that idea. What I'm thinking about doing is actually layering a bunch of strips and just basically mirroring the color palette that I have. So going from yellow to green to that navy blue to a lighter blue and then gray on the very end. And just having those be layered in strips behind my photo, and that will be the main gist of this layout. Now I am going to have to grab a few other pieces of paper for my scraps because that last color, which is gray, I didn't really pick anything that's gray. So I have this in my stash from way back when Making Memories used to make products for scrapbookers, and this one is a little bit too cool. I like the warmth of that other gray. It's a very subtle striped, or it's actually a very subtle polka dotted paper. And it was just the packaging from something, but I liked the gray polka dots so much that I hung on to it. And then I also have this packaging from Simon Says Stamp. It has a very subtle chevron pattern on it that's gray on white. So those will be my two pieces of gray paper to represent the gray on the end. And I'll have a couple of pieces of most of these colors. Now, this is a piece of cardstock, not a piece of pattern paper. It's not exactly the right color, but I think it's going to do. I'm going to make this into a piece of patterned paper. So I'm going to grab some stamps. I just want something that has a repeatable pattern that I can just easily create a little random tone-on-tone blue pattern. And I don't want to do circles because there's already a couple of different polka dots there. Don't want to do stripes because there's already a couple of different stripes. And so I'm looking for something else. Someone on the live stream suggested maybe foliage. So I pulled out a couple of these stamps, but that's seeming like it's going to be a little bit too elaborate for me. I just want this to be super fast. So although I do like all of these stamp sets, and one of my patrons in particular really liked that circle one by the Ink Road, I'm going to put all those away. Yeah, it's by the Ink Road. She wanted to know where it was from, and surprisingly, it is still available. So if you like that too, you can check out their website and find it probably. So now I normally have already done this, but I like for my stamp sets to have packing tape to hold the sheets of plastic together so that I can just freely rip the facing plastic off of it and it still is attached, and it makes it really easy to put it back and to take it off. And I don't lose the little sheets of paper. They don't get mixed up among my messy desk, and it's just super easy to put them back. I was just explaining that some of these stamps are missing because I have them on my planner stamp block, which I just kind of keep a little assortment of stamps that I'm using these days aside. So here we go. Let's make a pattern out of this. So I have this blue ink from Stampin' Up. It's called Balmy Blue. I have a few other shades of blue here that I don't think I'm going to use, but most of this is going to be Balmy Blue. So I'm going to start with these. These are Ellie's Studio stamps, by the way, and I love this stamp set. And it just has all of these blocks, and then it's got a coordinating one that has the outlines of them. So I'm just, as you can see, randomly stamping these blue hearts all over the place. And it's still looking a little bit too green for me. So I think I was using the wrong piece of paper. And so anyhow, I found this piece of blue, which is more of the right color. And I'm going to restamp all of these hearts all over this piece. And then I switched to a smaller heart just to fill in some of those spaces. I'm making some of them go off the page. I don't know exactly what size or shape of this paper I'm going to need. So I'm just, I'm just kind of doing my best to to make a random pattern here, and some of them are really messy. I'm not even stamping it entirely, but that's okay. Then I use the second color blue, which is called Pacific Point, and I'm using the outline versions of the same heart stamps with the Pacific Point just to add a little bit of extra interest to the pattern. So it's not all exactly the same thing over and over again. I'm introducing a new color and a new shape. Well, same shape, but just the outline version of it. So I like that. It looks pretty good and it's pretty casual. Not perfect, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be. I'll just clean my stamps there. I'm using my Stampin' Up stamp chamois. And I just got a bit of ink on my mat, and I wanted to clean my hands as well, just to make sure I don't make a mess all over everything. That's an Ellie Studio stamp set I'm just showing there, and put everything away, and there we go. I have a nice little patterned paper now to go amongst all of my other patterns. So let's start by tearing some of this paper. I really like this pattern, so I thought I might use 2 of them, but no, I'll just use 1. And I also really like that one. In the video, those both look pretty yellowy, but the polka dots are actually quite a bit more green than the little stripy pattern. And because these are scraps, I don't know the names of most of these papers, but one of them there is the Maggie Holmes Garden Story Collection, or Garden Time. Something about a garden. It's, oh, actually, yeah, one of them is also Jen Hadfield Everyday Collection. That's the polka dot one, the big bold polka dot with the navy blue dots. So I added another yellow because I felt like yellow was not all that well represented. Green is on my background, so it's okay that there's not a whole lot of green. But so there's like yellowy yellow and greeny yellow, basically, is the distinction there. And that basic gray paper, Lime Ricky, it's that swirly yellow and green one, the very, very bright one. That's one of my favorite papers of all time. I love that. I've decided to actually use the color palette as a design element. So I'm going to layer it right here with the photo. I thought about matting it, but I'm just going to use it right there. This is not the first time I've done this. I tend to use these palettes. I just love them. And so I will, I cut this. I'm trying to patch over that logo so that I can have this as just a plain piece of paper. So what I did was I just cut another piece of it, and I'm just going to patch it together so that the pattern lines up. So I'll get it so that it's just right, or as just right as I can get it. And then I'll just trim it down so that it matches the piece that I already have torn there. And once the whole page is made, you're not going to notice that quite as much. So that's basically the way that this page is going to look. And now I did have another idea about, remember how I said that I wanted this to be, the whole layout to be matted on the polka dotted background. I just love the boldness that that brings. But since I can't mat the whole thing, I actually kind of like this idea better of matting just the corner of it. It's almost like I'm adding a giant corner to this. I'm going to have to tear down the edges of this paper in order for some of this to show. And then what I'll do is I will align this in the way that I want it to look. So I'm basically going to use my grid mat to make sure, like my work mat, to make sure that this is aligned properly. And then I'll make this the way that I want it to look. And now it's probably bigger than 12 by 12. So let's trim down the non-decorated side of it. So just the plain green edge is what I'm trimming down right now. That first side was 12 inches, but this one was not. It was a little bit more than 12 inches. So now I have a perfect 12 by 12. You see there's a little gap there right where I just put my fingers. That's okay. You're just going to see the back of whatever page is next to this one in my scrapbook, and that's fine. I don't necessarily want to waste this paper, so I am trimming off and keeping parts of it. If it's going to be super layered over top of itself, I don't need that paper to be there. So I'm going to tear off some bits of it so I can use these scraps for another project. Yeah, I'm liking that. Garden Party. That's the name of the Maggie Holmes paper. So I'm going to layer these so that there's no gaps between them. Like some of them are longer than the others, but I don't want big, gaps. I want them to look all kind of cozied in together without gaps at the top and the bottom. I'll tear off that designer strip. I thought about leaving it actually because I like the font, but I decided to get rid of it. Now this piece is, of course, smaller than the others. You're only going to see it at the top. And I am going to cut down that extra part of it because you're not going to see that. So I'll keep that for something else. Especially where I have a couple of other layouts I want to make with this same color scheme. I'll hang on to all of these scraps for my next page that I use with this same color palette. So there we go. We'll tear that off because it was just a little bit distracting. And I like how the center strips are longer than the strips on either side. I think that makes a nice design. And you're going to see that this page actually comes together quite easily and quickly. It doesn't have a whole lot of embellishments besides all of this pattern paper in the background. I typically, when I do a background like this with a whole lot of pattern paper, I like this pattern paper to really stand out and be the embellishment on this page. And so I don't really need to put a whole lot of die cuts or chipboard or stickers or anything over this, because if I did, it would only serve to take away from these beautiful, beautiful patterns. And that's one of the things that I love about these layouts that involve strips of pattern paper, is that it really gives these papers a chance to shine. And I am a real lover of pattern paper. It's my go-to product probably is pattern paper. And so I like my layouts to just focus on the paper sometimes. My next page after this one has lots of embellishing, but this one I just kept it pretty minimal. So the paper behind the photos is the main embellishment. And then I don't know what was happening with my eyes here, but I could not get my photo centered in my grid mat. It was just wasn't working right. I had to grab my centering ruler to figure it out. So there I used some dimensional adhesive to attach the color palette to the photo so that it's raised up a little bit. And then I attached the photo to the paper. Now, did I attach the photo already? I don't remember putting adhesive on the photo. So here we are, and I now have to think about journaling and my title. So I was thinking I might use these thickers for my title. They're a really nice size. And then I can't forget about these enamel dots that I want to make sure that I use. And I think what I'll do is I'll put my journaling right here on the side, and then I'll put my title here on top of the color palette, so that the color palette will sort of be my anchoring element to give my title a bit of a home. So my first thought is that these letters are handy. These are from that same Paige Evans collection that the background paper is from. There's all these bright ones, but they're not quite the same color palette as what I've been using today. So now I'm thinking maybe these letter stickers won't work. I'd like to use that blue that's from the center of the color palette. I grabbed some gold thread here from my stash that I'm just going to use in 3 little bundles. These 3 bundles are going to basically define my 3 places that I will put my enamel dots. And then these thread bundles and the enamel dots will basically be it for the whole embellishment of this layout. I thought about adding some ink splatter, but I just like how clean and crisp this page looks without it. So I'm going to put, oh, there we go. I'm noticing that there's no adhesive underneath of that photo. So let's put some adhesive there. I'm glad that I noticed that. So I'm just using some glue dots to glue my little bundles of thread into bundles because this thread doesn't want to stay put. And then I'll put one up in the top there, one in the bottom corner here, and then one in the other bottom corner. These are bigger glue dots than what I meant to grab, but I'll just make it work because I didn't want to go back to my stash and find more glue dots. So that's a very, very subtle embellishment, but it's what I like about it is that it's so subtle and light and airy. It gives a bit of a casual feel to the spread, and it does not in any way take away from the pattern paper that I really want to shine in this layout. Thought about using those puffy letter stickers for a second there, but they're too distracting because they're two-toned. So let's grab the old Razcog that holds the letter stickers, and I'm just going through my navy blue. And because green happens to be right beside navy blue, ooh, I saw a set of these really bright green ones. Ooh, look at those. Those are perfect. They're from Dear Lizzie from several years ago. And look at that color. Wow. It's like it was made for this layout. What I was kind of fishing for was those Twilight ones, the navy blue foam letter stickers, because I love those, and I love them so much that they're almost run out. Like I don't have many options left for that font, and these are also one of my favorites. As you can tell, they're well used, but I do happen to have enough to write farewell here. So I am going to write out farewell. I had to start some music first because I was being a little quiet. I like to give my patrons a little something to listen to when I'm being a little bit more quiet in my scrapbooking. I'm usually describing what I'm doing real time, and I get to talk in quite a bit more detail when I do real time videos for patrons. So there, I really like how this title looks there. I think it's fantastic. I really, really love it. Those letters are amazing. I need more of those. You probably can't buy them anymore, but I need more similar ones. So now I have to think about the journaling. Got my title done. I have my little thread embellishments in those 3 little places. Now let's think about that journaling. Oops, before I do that, let's add a roller date stamp. There's this little bit of gray pattern paper, the polka dot one, that's sticking out under the 2 L's. And I think that that's a great little spot to put the date in a very subtle ink. So I'm using Slate Gray by Stampin' Up. Smoky Gray? Slate Gray. I'll tell you what it's called. It's called Smoky Slate. And I love my little roller date stamp that my patron and good friend Diane gave to me. I love that. And yeah, let's just do a little bit of tidying up. I have to put those letter stickers away before I get going. I'm just pointing to Epidemic Sound, which is the song that I'm playing right now. And sorry that you folks can't hear it. It would be super sped up if you could, so it wouldn't sound very good. Now I'm going to use another one of my favorite new tools that I've been using a lot for planning, but I haven't used it in my scrapbook yet, and that is my Pooley printer. So I have one of those little thermal printers that are becoming so popular in the journaling world these days, and I want to use it for my journaling on this layout, and I actually want to use it on my journaling for all of my layouts moving forward. I love this little printer. So what I'm going to do is type out my printing on my phone. I just have my phone plugged in so that I can easily share my screen here. But my journaling says, the last day at El Portillo, we looked up from our breakfast and noticed this beautiful double rainbow. It's like Las Terrenas. Oh, I misspelled Las Terrenas. Okay, that's all right. Was saying goodbye to us. I was going to put a little emoji there, but then I decided against it. So I'm going to select the whole thing and copy it, share my screen, and now I'm going to go into my Pooley app, which is the app that comes with this tiny little printer. And I'm going to select the horizontal document, which is going to print it horizontally instead of vertically on this. The beak is just a decoration. It doesn't actually do anything. I wanted the yellow beak, but they didn't have it, so I had to get the blue beak. And I have the V1 or the L1, which is not such great quality. I'm actually going to show the quality because my patrons were asking me about it, and you'll see. If I would recommend, if you want to get this, I would recommend getting the L2. I think I might get the L2. I don't know if I can still send this back. I've had it for less than a week, so yeah, I've only had it for a couple. Yeah, I've used it a couple times, so. Anyhow, I wish I had the L2. We'll see what I do about that. I might just sell this, or I think my daughter wants one, so maybe instead of her buying one, she can buy it for me. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, so anyhow, as you can see, when you print it horizontally, it comes out this way as opposed to the other way on the paper, which allows it to be wider than the width of the paper. And I just kind of trimmed it down, and now I'm gonna stick it there, and then I'm gonna realize, wow, that's awfully small, and you can change the font. And so I'm thinking, maybe, I wonder how easy this is to come off. It actually is really easy. It's quite forgiving. It's starting to rip the paper just a little bit at this point, but it let go pretty easily right up until now. So I just pulled it off. I still have all of that text in my phone, so I can easily fix it. So I'm going to make the font bigger. It's going to take me a little bit of figuring to make that font the size that I want it to be. At first, I thought that the font size didn't seem to be mattering or changing the size of it very much, but it turns out it does. So yeah, I think I'm going to make it 34 or something. So 24 is what it was before. And you can see the measurements along the edge there. I'm not sure if you can see, but it says millimeters at the bottom of, it's the top of the gray part or the bottom of the white part of my screen. It's covered right now by my keyboard, but when I get rid of the keyboard, you can see the measurements. And so that's why I have my ruler out. And I know that I have about 10 centimeters of space to work with. So I want this to be, maybe 90 millimeters or something like that. So that's why I keep going back and forth, is I'm looking at the length of it, and it's pretty accurate. It's not 100% accurate, but it's pretty close. It must give you a little bit of a margin because it's actually a little bit less than what it said it was going to be. It said it was going to be 94 millimeters, but it was actually maybe like 87 millimeters. So they must allow for a bit of a margin. And now that looks better. The words are a little bit more substantial and easier to read, and they just work better. I'm just comparing the length that it is, or the width that it is, versus the width that the app told me it was. So yeah, and now I'm just showing the quality of the printer. So if you're just printing words, that's fine. But if you're printing a photo, oops, my camera went a little crazy on me there. Sorry about that. If you're printing a photo, it's really bad quality. So I think that if you got the L2, it would print much better photos. It's not really a great photo printer anyways. I think even the L2 probably isn't that great. Oops. It's sticky. So there we go. Now I have this nice journaling along the edge. I like how that looks. Turn my little friend off. And I think that that's it. Nope, I've forgotten my enamel dots, of course. And I thought for a second there that I might want some other enamel dots. So I did take out my enamel dot storage, which I keep in these sleeves in this photo album. But it turns out I think I'm just going to use these ones. I'm just going to use these ones. I'm going to use a combination of the green and the yellow in the 3 spots that I have already decided to put embellishments based on where my thread went. And I don't like the shapes, so I'm going to replace the shapes, both the star and the heart, with little dots so that they're all dots now. And I think if I were sprinkling, I would just sprinkle a little bit of splatter in each of those 3 corners as well. And that would be it for this one. But I do really like it without the splatter. I think it looks nice and clean and crisp. And it really emphasizes all of the lines on this page, because you've got the nice line that the matting of the photo gives you, but also all of those strips of paper as well. So before I share the photos, which I do have coming up in a second here, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to my Patreon supporters. These folks help make this channel happen, so big thanks to all of them. Patrons get early ad-free access to all my process videos and real-time unedited versions of my videos, as well as a monthly live stream, Zoom chats, behind-the-scenes videos of my room and my process. And also thanks to you for watching all the way to the end. Here are those photos I was talking about. So I hope that you enjoyed this process and learned a little something about using a color palette to guide you in your scrapbooking process. If you're interested in seeing another way that this could play out, feel free to check out my next video, which should be posted right below this one. And it is another take using that other color choice tool, and goes in a completely different direction. Take care and have a great scrappy week.